She was forced to marry a cold stranger to save her family from crushing debt. He was all sharp suits and colder eyes, treating her like a business deal. What she didn't know, he'd been watching her for years, and this marriage was his twisted way of keeping her safe from a world she never knew existed. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Elena Rossi didn't think much of it at first. Working as an art restorer at the Hartwell Museum in Manhattan meant dealing with paperwork constantly: insurance forms, provenance documents, acquisition letters. She trained herself to sort mail while eating lunch, one hand holding a fork, the other slicing through correspondence with a letter opener. But this envelope was different. Heavy, cream-colored, the kind of paper that whispered money before you even opened it. Her name was written in actual calligraphy across the front, and there was no return address. Just a wax seal she didn't recognize, a stylized V pressed into dark red wax. Elena set down her sandwich and studied it. Something cold settled in her stomach. She broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a business card. The letter was brief, almost brutal in its efficiency. Miss Rossi, your father's debts have come due. The outstanding balance of $47 million must be settled within 14 days, or we will be forced to seize all family assets and pursue legal action against your brother, Marco, who co-signed the final loan documents. However, we are prepared to offer an alternative arrangement. Please contact our office immediately. Sincerely, Villano Legal Group. Elena read it 3 times, her hands starting to shake. $4.7 million. Her father had been dead for 2 years. How is this even possible? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Miss Rossi. The voice was smooth, professional, female. My name is Catherine Mills. I'm calling on behalf of Villano Legal Group. Did you receive our letter?
Yes. Just now.
But there must be some mistake. My father. Your father took out several high-interest loans to save his construction company in 2019. When he passed, those debts transferred to his estate. Your brother Marco signed as guarantor 6 months before your father's death. Elena's vision blurred.
Marco.
Her baby brother, who'd just turned 23, who was starting grad school at Columbia, who couldn't possibly have understood what he was signing. I don't have that kind of money, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. We understand, which is why Mr. Villano has authorized me to present an alternative. What alternative? There was a pause. It would be better to discuss this in person. Can you come to our office today? Say, 5 o'clock. Elena looked at the half-restored Renaissance painting on her workbench, the careful brushstrokes she'd been documenting all morning. Her normal, quiet, predictable life. I'll be there, she said. The Villano Legal Group occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Elena had walked past it 100 times without really seeing it. Now, standing in the lobby with its marble floors and modern art installations, she felt impossibly small. Catherine Mills met her at reception, a striking woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and a handshake like a vice. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Catherine said, leading her to a private elevator. Mr. Villano appreciates punctuality. Am I meeting him? I thought this was just about paperwork. Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Villano takes a personal interest in all significant arrangements. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the late afternoon sun turning the city gold. The furniture was expensive but minimal, all clean lines and dark wood. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the skyline, was a man. He turned as they entered. Elena's first thought was that he looked like he'd been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, dark hair cut precisely. He wore a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months, and his eyes, gray, cold, assessing, swept over her with the efficiency of someone cataloging inventory. Miss Rossi, his voice was deep, controlled.
I'm Daniel Villano.
He didn't offer his hand, just gestured to a chair across from a massive desk. Elena sat because her legs suddenly felt unsteady. Catherine placed a folder in front of her and retreated to stand by the door. I assume you've had time to review our letter, Damien said, sitting down across from her. And to verify its accuracy. I don't understand how my father could owe you this much money. His company was struggling, but your father was desperate. Desperate men make poor financial decisions. Damien opened the folder, revealing page after page of documents, loan agreements, payment schedules, all bearing her father's signature. He borrowed from us when the banks refused him. We were his last option. And you charge him what? 50% interest? This is predatory. This is business. Your father understood the terms. Damien's expression didn't change. The debt exists. Your brother guaranteed it. We can pursue legal collection, which will destroy what's left of your family's assets and likely send Marco to prison for fraud.
Or.
He paused, and Elena felt her heart hammering. Or you marry me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. Excuse me? A legal marriage. Registered, binding. You'll take my name, live in my home, and fulfill the social obligations of being my wife for a minimum of 1 year. In exchange, your family's debt is erased. Marco walks away clean. Your mother keeps her house. This is insane. You can't just. People don't do this. People do many things when properly motivated, Miss Rossi. Damien leaned back, his gray eyes never leaving hers. I need a wife. You need your family protected. It's a simple transaction. Why me? Why not just, I don't know, date someone? Because this isn't about romance. It's about optics. I need someone educated, presentable, and controllable. You need money and protection. We're compatible in the ways that matter. The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. Controllable. And if I refuse, then Catherine will file the necessary paperwork tomorrow morning. Your brother will be arrested by the weekend. Your mother will lose everything. You'll spend the next decade paying off debts you didn't create. He straightened his cuffs. But please, take your time deciding. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Elena stood, her chair scraping loudly. You're insane. I'm practical. Damien stood as well, towering over her. Catherine will show you out. The contract details are in the folder. Read them carefully. At the elevator, Elena's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the folder. Catherine pressed the button for her. For what it's worth, she said quietly, Mr. Villano doesn't make offers lightly. And he always keeps his word. The elevator doors closed, and Elena sagged against the wall. By the time she reached the street, tears were streaming down her face. She called Marco. He didn't answer. She called her mother.
Elena?
What's wrong? Mom, did Dad owe money to someone named Villano? The silence on the other end told her everything. Mom? Oh, sweetheart, her mother's voice cracked. Oh, Elena. I'm so sorry. That night, Elena's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just destroyed. Paintings slashed. Furniture overturned. And on her mirror, written in red lipstick, 9 a.m. She didn't sleep. At 8:47 a.m., she walked back into that building. Catherine was waiting with a pen. The chapel was nothing like Elena had imagined a wedding would be. Not that she'd spent much time imagining weddings. Her work had always consumed her, leaving little room for romantic fantasies. But even in her most cynical moments, she'd never pictured this. A small private chapel in Westchester, sterile as a doctor's office, with exactly 7 people in attendance. 6 of them worked for Damien. Elena stood in the anteroom, staring at herself in a full-length mirror. The dress had been delivered to her apartment that morning, white silk, simple and elegant, fitting her perfectly. Someone had done their research. Someone had been watching her long before that envelope arrived. The thought made her skin crawl. It's time. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her expression professionally neutral. She'd been assigned as Elena's handler, apparently, making sure the merchandise showed up on schedule. Elena smoothed down the dress with trembling hands. I need a minute. Mr. Villano doesn't appreciate delays. Mr. Villano can wait 60 seconds. Catherine's eyebrow lifted slightly, surprise, maybe even respect, but she stepped back into the hallway. Elena closed her eyes and tried to breathe. She'd called Marco last night after signing the initial papers, told him everything was fine, that she'd handled Dad's old business debts. He'd been relieved, grateful, completely unaware that his sister had just sold herself to save him. Her mother knew. Elena had driven to her house in Brooklyn at midnight, sat at the kitchen table, and explained everything. Her mother had cried, tried to refuse, said they'd find another way. But they both knew there was no other way. The Villanos had made sure of that. I'll be okay, Mama, Elena had whispered, holding her mother's shaking hands. It's just a year. I can survive a year. Now, standing in this cold chapel, she wasn't so certain. The ceremony itself lasted less than 15 minutes. Damien stood at the altar in a black suit, his expression as unreadable as carved marble. Next to him was a man Elena recognized from the office, Vincent, his head of security. Tall, scarred, watching everything with predator's eyes. The other attendees sat in the front pew, 3 men in expensive suits, all wearing the same cold, assessing expressions. Damien's associates, his soldiers, more like. No one smiled. No one looked happy. The officiant, a nervous man in his 60s, rushed through the words like he was reading a grocery list. Do you, Damien Villano, take this woman? I do. Damien's voice was flat, efficient. And do you, Elena Rossi, take this man? Elena's throat closed. She looked at Damien, at those gray eyes that held no warmth, no emotion, nothing human at all. Miss Rossi, the officiant prompted. Damien's jaw tightened imperceptibly.
Ido, Elena whispered.
The ring appeared from nowhere, platinum, embedded with small diamonds, heavy on her finger. It felt exactly like what it was, a shackle with expensive decoration. You may kiss the bride. Damien stepped forward, and Elena's heart hammered. But he simply leaned in, pressed his lips to her forehead, cold, brief, impersonal, and stepped back. It's done, he said to Vincent. Not to her. Not to his wife. To his head of security. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. The reception, if it could be called that, took place in a private room at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. Elena sat at Damien's right hand while lawyers circulated documents, while his associates talked in low voices about shipping routes and property acquisitions. No one spoke to her except to offer wine, which she refused. Damien barely looked at her. He was in his element here, commanding, controlled, discussing business with the casual authority of someone who'd never been told no in his life. The Brooklyn property closes next week, one of the men said. He had silver hair and a scar through his eyebrow. Santoro's people are contesting the zoning, but we have the city councilman's vote. Good. Vincent, make sure the transition is clean. No incidents. Understood. Elena pushed food around her plate, untouched. This was her wedding dinner. This was her new life. You should eat. Damien's voice, low and close to her ear, made her jump. You'll need your strength. She turned to look at him. For what? The flight. We leave in 2 hours. Flight? Where? Home. He took a sip of whiskey. Did you think we'd stay in New York? I have business to handle upstate. You'll need to pack quickly. Catherine will help you. I have a job. My apartment. Your employment at the Hartwell Museum has been terminated. You resigned yesterday, effective immediately. Catherine sent the email from your account. His tone remained conversational, like he was discussing the weather. Your apartment lease has been paid through the end of the year. Your belongings will be moved to storage. Elena's vision blurred with rage. You had no right. I have every right. You're my wife now. You go where I go. You do what I tell you to do. He set down his glass, finally turning to face her fully. This is business, Elena, not sentiment. The sooner you accept that, the easier this year will be for both of us. She wanted to throw her wine in his face. She wanted to scream. Instead, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly, drawing every eye in the room. "Excuse me. I need air." Damien caught her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. "Vincent will accompany you. You don't go anywhere alone. Ever. Let go of me." His gray eyes held hers for a long moment. Then he released her, and she fled, Vincent's heavy footsteps following close behind. Outside, the city glittered with evening lights. Free people walked past, laughing, living their lives. Elena looked down at the ring on her finger and felt the trap close completely. In 2 hours, she boarded a plane to somewhere she'd never agreed to go. In 2 hours, her old life would be truly, finally over. The private jet was obscene in its luxury, leather seats that reclined into beds, a full bar, ambient lighting that somehow made everything feel like an expensive hotel. Elena sat by the window, watching New York disappear beneath clouds, and said nothing. Damien worked on his laptop the entire flight, occasionally taking calls in Italian. His voice shifted when he spoke his father's language, became sharper, more dangerous. Elena caught fragments, sistemarlo, nessun testimone, entro venerdì endolit. No witnesses. By Friday. She pretended to sleep. They landed somewhere in upstate New York just after midnight. A car was waiting, black SUV with tinted windows. Vincent drove while Damien continued working on his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's cold glow. The road wound through dense forest, then opened suddenly onto a vista that stole Elena's breath despite everything. A lake. Massive, dark as ink, reflecting moonlight like shattered glass. And on its shore, a villa that looked transplanted from the Italian countryside, stone and terracotta sprawling across manicured grounds, lit by soft amber lights. "Welcome home," Damien said flatly, not looking up from his phone. Home. The word felt like a lie. The interior was exactly what Elena expected, all old-world elegance and modern security. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, artwork that was probably worth more than her entire neighborhood. But also cameras in every corner, motion sensors on the windows, and men in suits stationed at every entrance. A prison wrapped in luxury. Mrs. Villano, an older woman, appeared, gray hair in a neat bun, wearing a simple black dress. "I'm Maria, the house manager. Let me show you to your room." "Our room," Damien corrected, snapping his laptop closed. "She stays with me." Elena's stomach dropped. That wasn't in the contract. The contract says you'll fulfill the obligations of a wife. That includes appearances. If the staff thinks we sleep separately, word spreads. Word spreads, people ask questions. Questions lead to problems. He handed his briefcase to Vincent. "I'm not interested in problems." Maria looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Elena followed her up a curved staircase, down a hallway lined with more expensive art, mostly Renaissance pieces, she noted professionally. A different version of herself would have been fascinated. Now she just felt numb. The master suite was enormous. King bed with silk sheets, sitting area with fireplace, balcony overlooking the lake, and one bathroom. "Your clothes have been unpacked," Maria said gently, gesturing to a walk-in closet. "If you need anything, just call. I'm usually in the kitchen until 10-inch. "Thank you," Elena managed. When Maria left, Elena explored her new cage. The closet was full of clothes she'd never bought, designer labels, everything in her size, everything tasteful and expensive and completely impersonal. Someone had studied her, cataloged her measurements, her style, reduced her to data points and shopping lists. She tried the balcony door. Locked. The windows. Also locked. Her phone, the new one Catherine had given her, had exactly 6 contacts: Damien, Vincent, Catherine, Maria, her mother, and Marco. When she tried to add more, the phone vibrated with an error message. Contact additions require administrator approval. She was still staring at it when Damien entered, loosening his tie. "I need to call my friends," Elena said. "Let them know I'm okay." "No." "Excuse me? Your friends think you eloped with a man you'd been dating privately. Catherine sent them all a lovely email. Very romantic. They're happy for you. He poured himself whiskey from a decanter on the dresser. You'll video chat with your mother every Sunday at 2 p. and Marco can visit once a month, supervised. That's it. You can't isolate me completely. I can, and I will. You're safe because you're mine now. Don't mistake protection for freedom, Elena. The casual cruelty in his voice ignited something in her. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. This is a business arrangement, remember? You said so yourself. And the business requires you to stay alive and compliant. He took a sip of whiskey, watching her over the rim of the glass. There are people who would hurt you to hurt me, who would use you as leverage, who would make you disappear and leave pieces of you on my doorstep as a message. So yes, you're mine. My responsibility. My problem to manage. Who are you?
Elena whispered.
What are you really? Damien smiled, the first real expression she'd seen from him, and it was terrifying in its emptiness.
I'm a businessman, Elena.
I buy things, sell things, move things around. Sometimes those things are legal. Often they're not, but they're always profitable. You're a criminal. I'm pragmatic, he set down his glass. I'm also tired. The bed is large enough for both of us. Stay on your side. He disappeared into the bathroom, and Elena heard the shower start. She should run. Somehow find a way past the guards into the forest, to the road, to anywhere else. But she thought of Marco, safe at Columbia. Of her mother, keeping her house in Brooklyn. Of the alternative Damien had painted, debts, prison, destruction. So instead, she changed into pajamas from the drawer, climbed into the massive bed, and stayed as far to her side as possible. When Damien emerged and slid under the covers without a word, Elena lay rigid, staring at the ceiling. Through the window, she could see the moon on the lake, beautiful and unreachable. Around 2 a.m., she heard voices downstairs. Damien's phone buzzed. He answered in Italian, his voice cold. Portalo nel bosco. Nessuno lo troverà, take him to the woods. No one will find him. Then he hung up and went back to sleep like he'd ordered a pizza. Elena finally understood what she'd married into. And it was so much worse than she'd imagined. Elena woke to an empty bed. She'd barely slept. Every sound in the unfamiliar house had jerked her awake, her mind replaying Damien's phone call about the woods, about someone no one would find. When exhaustion finally claimed her around dawn, she dreamed of her father, of him signing papers with that Volano crest, of him trying to warn her about something she couldn't quite hear. Now, sunlight streamed through the windows, and Damien was gone. She found Maria in the kitchen, preparing coffee. Mr. Volano left early for meetings, Maria said, handing Elena a cup. He said you're free to explore the grounds, but Vincent will accompany you. House rules. I'm a prisoner, you mean? Maria's expression softened with something like pity. I've worked for the Volano family for 20 years, Mrs. Volano. I've seen many things. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Damien is not his father. He's hard, yes. Cold, yes. But he's not cruel without reason. Elena wasn't sure she believed that, but she took her coffee onto the terrace anyway. The villa by daylight was even more beautiful. Gardens that cascaded down to the lake, stone pathways lined with lavender, a small dock with a boat she'd probably never be allowed to use. Vincent stood nearby, silent and watchful, but at least he gave her space. She spent the morning walking the grounds, trying to map her prison. High walls surrounded the property, cameras everywhere, guards stationed at the main gate. No easy escape. Maybe no escape at all. By afternoon, restless and angry, Elena found herself in what Maria called the sunroom, a glass-enclosed space filled with plants and natural light. Someone had left art supplies there. Expensive ones. Oil paints, stretched canvases, professional brushes. She should have been suspicious. Instead, she found herself picking up a brush for the first time in days, mixing colors, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of creation. She didn't hear Damien return until his voice cut through her concentration. You paint. Elena jumped, nearly knocking over her palette. He stood in the doorway, still in his suit but with his tie loosened, looking less like a marble statue and more like a tired man. I restore paintings, she corrected. This is just. I needed something to do with my hands. He stepped closer, studying her canvas, an abstract piece, all dark blues and grays, angry slashes of black. It's good. Aggressive, but good. It's how I feel. I know. He picked up a tube of paint, examined it, set it down. The supplies are yours. Maria mentioned you'd need them.
Elena blinked.
You told Maria to get these. I told her to make the house comfortable for you. She made the inference. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's a stray cat that comes around. Orange tabby. Maria's been feeding it by the kitchen door. If you want something to do, you could help with that. Then he was gone, leaving Elena confused and oddly unsettled. A man who ordered people disappeared into the woods didn't care about stray cats. Did he? 3 days passed in strange routine. Damien left early, returned late. Elena painted, walked the grounds, and discovered the cat, a scrawny orange thing with a torn ear who watched her suspiciously from the bushes. She named him Dante, after the poet who'd written about hell. She was feeding Dante on the 4th evening when the sky opened up. Rain came in sheets, violent and sudden, turning the world gray. Elena ran for the house, but stopped when she saw light spilling from the workshop, a separate building she'd been told was off-limits. The door was ajar. She should have walked away. Instead, curiosity pulled her forward. Inside, she found Damien hunched over a workbench, tools spread before him, fixing what looked like an antique chair. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, and he was completely absorbed in his work. You're good with your hands, Elena said from the doorway. He didn't startle, just glanced up briefly. My grandfather was a carpenter. Before the family business expanded into other areas, he tested a joint, frowned, adjusted it. He taught me, said a man should know how to build things, not just break them. It was the most personal thing he'd ever told her. Thunder cracked overhead. The lights flickered, then died completely. Backup generator will kick in shortly, Damien said calmly, setting down his tools. But the generator didn't start. The darkness was absolute, broken only by lightning flashes through the windows. Elena heard Damien moving, then a match struck. Candlelight bloomed, casting shadows across his face. He looked different in the flickering light, younger, less certain. There's a supply closet in the main hall, he said. More candles. Can you? He swayed suddenly, catching himself on the workbench. Damien?
I've fine.
But when lightning flashed again, Elena saw it, blood, dark and wet, spreading across his white shirt near his left shoulder. You're shot. It's nothing. A graze from earlier. He tried to stand straight, failed. Vincent's handled it before, but he's not here right now. Drove into town for supplies before the storm. You need a doctor. No doctors.
No hospitals.
No paper trails. His jaw was tight with pain. It'll stop bleeding on its own. Elena stared at him. This man who'd bought her, imprisoned her, controlled every aspect of her life, and made a decision she'd probably regret. Sit down, she ordered. I restored a painting last year that depicted Civil War field surgery. I paid attention to the medical techniques. If you have a first aid kit, I can at least clean and stitch it properly. Why would you help me? Because if you bleed out, I have no idea what happens to my family's protection, she met his eyes. And because despite everything, I'm not capable of watching someone suffer when I can help. Even you. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe even respect. Supply closet. 2nd floor. Red box. Elena found the medical kit and returned to find Damien sitting, shirt off, revealing not just the bullet wound but a roadmap of scars across his torso. Old wounds. A history of violence written on his skin. Her hands shook as she cleaned the wound. It really was just a graze, thankfully, and prepared the suture needle. This will hurt, she warned. It already hurts. She worked by candlelight, each stitch careful and precise. Damien didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, but she felt the tension in his muscles, saw the white of his knuckles as he gripped the edge of the bench. Done, she finally said, tying off the last stitch. Thank you. The words were quiet, genuine. The first human thing she'd heard from him. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, something had shifted between them. Fragile, unnamed, but undeniably real. For the first time since that envelope arrived, Elena saw past the marble exterior to the man underneath. And that terrified her more than anything else. The morning after the storm, Damien was gone before Elena woke. No note, no acknowledgement of what had passed between them in the candlelit workshop. Just an empty bed and the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. Elena told herself she was relieved. She spent the day painting, violent slashes of red and black that made Maria pause in the doorway with concern. But the housekeeper said nothing, just left lunch on a tray and quietly retreated. By evening, Elena had worked herself into exhaustion. She was cleaning brushes when Vincent appeared. Mr. Villano requests your presence at dinner tonight. 8 o'clock. Formal dress, his tone was professionally neutral, but something in his eyes seemed almost apologetic. He has associates visiting. You'll need to play the part. The part of the obedient wife. The part of someone who chose this, Vincent said carefully. For their safety and yours. Elena wanted to argue, but Vincent had already left. In the closet, she found a dress she'd never seen before, deep emerald silk that probably cost more than a month's salary at the museum. Someone had excellent taste. Someone had been planning this. At precisely 8 o'clock, she descended the stairs. The dining room had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers blazed, the long mahogany table was set for 6, and Damien stood by the window in a black suit, every inch the powerful businessman. When he turned and saw her, something flickered in his eyes, appreciation, maybe even desire, but it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. You look appropriate, he said coldly. The word stung more than it should have. 2 men entered moments later, both in expensive suits, both carrying themselves with the casual confidence of dangerous people. The first was older, silver-haired, with cold blue eyes that assessed Elena like she was livestock. The second was younger, handsome in a predatory way, with a scar along his jaw. Gentlemen, Damien said smoothly. May I introduce my wife, Elena? Elena, this is Mr. Caruso and his associate, Mr. Russo. Elena shook their hands, forcing a smile. Villano, you dark horse, Caruso said with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. We had no idea you were even seeing anyone, and suddenly you're married. I prefer to keep my personal life private, Damien replied, his hand settling possessively on Elena's lower back. The touch burned through the silk. Shall we sit? Dinner was a performance. Elena played her role, smiled when appropriate, spoke little, let Damien order her wine. She was decoration, a prop in whatever game these men were playing. The conversation flowed around her, discussions of shipments and territory and the Lucano situation. She tried to follow, to understand what world she'd been dragged into, but the men spoke in careful euphemisms and knowing glances. Until Russo's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and leaned toward Caruso. The Brooklyn thing. Lucano's people are pushing back harder than expected. Handle it, Caruso said dismissively. They hit one of our warehouses this afternoon. Burned it to the ground. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Damien's hand tightened imperceptibly on his wine glass. When were you planning to mention this, Anthony? It's handled, Villano. Just posturing. The Lucanos are desperate. Desperate men are dangerous men. Damien's voice was ice. Especially the Lucanos. Elena's blood went cold. She knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The Lucano crime family. Old money, old violence, old grudges that left bodies in their wake. What's their interest in Brooklyn? Damien continued. Same as always.
Control.
They think because your father's gone, they can move into territory that's rightfully yours. Caruso leaned back. But we're making it clear that's not happening. The family stands united. The word hung in the air like smoke. Family. Not business partners. Not associates. Family meant Mafia. Elena's hands trembled in her lap. She'd suspected, of course. The guards, the guns, the whispered conversations. But hearing it confirmed, sitting at a table with these men who spoke casually of warehouses burning and territories and violence, it made everything horrifyingly real. She must have made some sound because Damien's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. A warning or a comfort. She couldn't tell. My wife doesn't need to hear business talk, Damien said smoothly. Perhaps we should adjourn to my study for brandy? Elena can retire. Of course, Caruso stood, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Villano. You're a lucky woman.
Lucky.
The word was a joke. Elena excused herself and practically fled upstairs. In the bathroom, she gripped the marble sink, staring at her reflection. The emerald dress, the perfect hair, the diamond ring. She looked like someone else entirely. She looked like a mafia wife. When Damien finally came to bed hours later, reeking of cigar smoke and whiskey, Elena was pretending to sleep. He stood over her for a long moment. She could feel his gaze. I know you're awake, he said quietly. She opened her eyes. You heard too much tonight, he continued, his voice devoid of emotion. The men you met, the business we discussed, you'll forget all of it. You'll never speak of it. Not to mother, not to Marco, not to anyone. Understood? And if I don't, then you become a liability. And I protect my interests by eliminating liabilities. He began unbuttoning his shirt. But you're smarter than that, Elena. You know when to stay silent.
She did.
God help her, she did. That night, she dreamed of her father again. But this time, she saw his face clearly, saw the fear in his eyes as he signed papers, saw the Villano crest stamped in wax, heard him whisper, Forgive me. She woke trembling, tears on her cheeks. Beside her, Damien slept soundly, one hand resting near the gun on his nightstand. Elena stared at the ceiling until dawn, understanding finally settling over her like a shroud. She hadn't just married into danger. She'd married into a war. You need to smile more. Catherine was adjusting Elena's diamond necklace in the back of the limousine, her expression critical. They were heading to Milan, not the city in Italy, but an upscale art gallery in Manhattan's Chelsea district. Some philanthropist's charity gala that Damien deemed important enough to drag Elena into the city for. I'm smiling, Elena said flatly. You look like you're at a funeral. Tonight, you're madly in love with your husband. You're the envy of every woman in the room.
Can you manage that?
Elena wanted to say something cutting, but Damien's voice interrupted from across the car. She'll be fine, Catherine. Won't you, Elena? It wasn't really a question. He looked devastating in his tuxedo, hair perfectly styled, every inch the sophisticated businessman. No one at this gala would guess what he really was, what he really did. I'll be perfect, Elena said, meeting his eyes with defiance. Something almost like amusement crossed his face. The gallery was spectacular, 3 floors of contemporary art, champagne fountains, New York's elite draped in designer labels, and inherited wealth. Elena felt eyes tracking them the moment they entered. Women assessed her with barely concealed envy or curiosity. Men studied Damien with respect and wariness. Stay close, Damien murmured, his hand at her back. Smile. Look enchanted. And if anyone asks how we met, we've been dating quietly for 8 months. Love at first sight. Very romantic. You're a terrible romantic. I'm an excellent liar. There's a difference. He guided her through the crowd, shaking hands, making introductions Elena immediately forgot. She played her part, laughed at appropriate moments, gazed at Damien adoringly, let him tell their fabricated love story to curious socialites. It was exhausting. She was studying a particularly striking abstract piece when a voice behind her said, "Elena Rossi? My God, it really is you." She turned to find Professor James Mitchell, her mentor from Columbia, the man who'd guided her through her master's program, who'd written her recommendation for the Hartwell position. Professor Mitchell, Elena's smile became genuine for the first time that night. "I didn't know you'd be here. I'm on the museum's acquisition board now. But Elena, I heard you resigned from Hartwell? What happened?" His kind eyes were full of concern. "And married? This is all so sudden." Life has a way of surprising us. She felt Damien materialize beside her, his presence like a cold front moving in. "James Mitchell," the professor said, extending his hand. "I taught Elena at Columbia. Brilliant student. The museum was lucky to have her." Damien Villano, the handshake was brief, territorial. "Her husband. And yes, I'm well aware of my wife's talents." Villano, Professor Mitchell's expression shifted subtly, recognition, then something like confusion. "The Villano Group? I consulted on an estate acquisition last year. Your company was involved in the bidding." "We have diverse interests." Damien's tone was pleasant, but Elena felt the warning in it. "Yes, I remember now. The Rossi construction contracts came up in the due diligence. Your father and Elena's father had business dealings, didn't they?" Small world. Professor Mitchell turned to Elena. "Is that how you two met? Through your families?" Elena's throat went dry. "Something like that," Damien said smoothly. "Though I prefer to think fate played a larger role. If you'll excuse us, Professor, I see someone I need to speak with." He steered Elena away before Mitchell could respond. "He knows," Elena whispered urgently. "He connected the dots. He suspects. He doesn't know. There's a difference." Damien's grip on her arm was firm. "And he won't pursue it because he's smart enough to understand when curiosity becomes dangerous." "You'd threaten him?" "I'd protect what's mine. There's a difference there, too." They spent another hour circulating. Elena's face hurt from fake smiling. But then, near the exit, she saw Professor Mitchell again, this time talking quietly with a woman in a red dress, showing her something on his phone. Their eyes met across the room. He looked worried for her. The car ride back was tense. Vincent drove while Damien worked on his phone, and Elena stared out the window at the city lights. They were crossing back into Westchester when Damien finally spoke. "You handled yourself well tonight. I'm an excellent liar too, apparently. It's a useful skill in this life. This isn't my life. This is your prison." Damien's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the night exploded. The rear windshield shattered. Vincent swore and swerved. Elena screamed as Damien threw himself over her, dragging her down to the floor. More gunfire. The sickening thud of bullets hitting metal. "Stay down," Damien shouted. His weight pressed her into the floor, protective and suffocating. Vincent accelerated, weaving through traffic. Return fire erupted, Vincent shooting through his window with one hand while steering with the other. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was real. People were trying to kill them. The SUV took a corner so hard she felt it tilt, then they were speeding down a side street. The gunfire stopped, replaced by sirens in the distance. "Clear," Vincent finally said, his voice tight. Damien slowly lifted off Elena. In the dim light, she saw blood on his arm, his jacket torn, a bullet graze visible through the ripped fabric. "You're hurt," she gasped. "I'm fine," but his hands shook slightly as he helped her sit up. Glass glittered in her hair, on her dress. "Are you hurt? Did they hit you?"
No.
"No, I don't think so." He cupped her face, checking her over with something like panic in his eyes. Then he caught himself, the mask slamming back into place. "Lucanos," Vincent said grimly. "Had to be. Get us home." Now, Damien pulled out his phone. And someone's going to answer for this. Elena started shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. Damien pulled her against his chest without a word, his heart pounding against her ear. They'd tried to kill him. They'd tried to kill her too. This was real. This was her life now. And there was no going back. Elena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard gunfire, felt glass exploding around her, tasted fear sharp and metallic on her tongue. Damien had insisted the villa's doctor examine her, a quiet man who asked no questions and confirmed she was physically unharmed. Emotionally was another story. It was 3 a.m. when she finally gave up on sleep and slipped out of bed. Damien was sprawled across the sheets, one arm thrown over his face, his wounded arm freshly bandaged. Even in sleep, he looked tense, ready for violence. Elena wrapped herself in a silk robe and padded downstairs. The house was dark except for emergency lighting and the glow of security monitors in Vincent's office. She could hear his voice, low and urgent, speaking to someone about perimeter reinforcement and doubling the night watch. She should go back upstairs. Should try to sleep. Should stop asking questions. Instead, she found herself walking toward the one place she'd been explicitly forbidden to go, Damien's private study. The door was locked, but Maria had mentioned once that Damien kept a spare key in the library, hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of The Prince by Machiavelli. Of course he did. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the study door and slipped inside. The room was pure Damien, dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with books and locked cabinets. His desk was massive, organized with military precision. And on it, barely visible in the moonlight streaming through the windows, was a folder. Rossi Holdings was printed across the tab. Elena's heart hammered as she opened it. The first page was a dossier on her. Her photo, her education, her employment history, her daily routines. Everything documented with disturbing thoroughness. There were photos she'd never known were taken. Her leaving the museum, having coffee with friends, visiting her mother in Brooklyn. He'd been watching her for months. Maybe years. Deeper in the folder, financial documents showing her father's construction company, the loans, the cascade of debt. But there were older papers too, contracts between her father and someone named Antonio Villano, dated 15 years ago. Damien's father. The contracts were for construction projects that looked legitimate on the surface, but the payment structures were strange. Large cash deposits, offshore accounts, vague deliverables. Her father had been building something for the Villano family, something they wanted hidden. Then she found the photographs. Her father and Antonio Villano shaking hands outside a construction site. Her father looking nervous, diminished next to the older Villano's commanding presence. More photos. Her father at family dinners with the Villanos, her father signing papers, her father looking increasingly desperate as the years progressed. And then a newspaper clipping. Construction magnate Thomas Rossi dies in apparent suicide. Elena's vision blurred. Her father hadn't just borrowed money. He'd been trapped in the same web she was caught in now. He'd been owned. She kept searching, her hands shaking, and found a letter. Handwritten. Old. Dear Thomas, I'm writing this knowing I may not survive to deliver it in person. The Lucanos are closing in, and my time is running short. But I want you to know that our agreement stands beyond my death. My son Damien will honor our arrangement. When the time comes, he will protect your children. Your debt will not fall on them, unless they refuse protection. Then I cannot help what follows. You built many things for me, Thomas. Some legal, some less so. But you never asked questions, and for that loyalty, your family will be shielded from the consequences. Trust Damien. He's harder than I ever was, colder, but he keeps his word. Make sure Elena and Marco stay out of this world. It's no place for good people. Antonio. The date was 6 months before her father's death. Before his suicide. Elena's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the letter. Her father had known he was in too deep. had known the Villanos would come for his children eventually, and he'd made a deal to protect them. She kept digging, frantic now, and found more recent documents. Reports about the Lucanos, the family that had killed Antonio Villano in a restaurant shooting 3 years ago. The same family trying to absorb Villano territory to finish what they'd started. And there, highlighted in red, Elena Rossi, asset or liability. Below it, in Damien's harsh handwriting, asset. Marry her. Keep her close. Lucanos won't expect it. Best protection. She'd been a chess piece. A strategic move in a war she hadn't known existed. The office door opened. Elena spun, clutching the papers, to find Damien silhouetted in the doorway. He was shirtless, bandaged, and his expression was absolutely murderous.
Get out
Of
my
office. You knew, her voice broke. You knew about my father. About what really happened to him.
eh?
Did he kill himself? Or did your family? Your father killed himself, Damien said, his voice like shattered glass. Because he couldn't pay what he owed, and he couldn't live with what he'd built for us. He chose the coward's way out, leaving you and Marco to deal with the consequences. And you've been planning this. Planning me. For how long? Damien stepped into the room, and Elena backed up against the desk. Since my father died, and I inherited his promises. Since the Lucanos started circling. Since I realized the best way to honor my father's deal and protect myself was to make you legally mine. I'm not a thing to be owned. You are in this world. His control finally cracked. You think tonight was random? The Lucanos know exactly who you are now. They know you're my weakness, my liability. The only reason you're still alive is because you're my wife, because touching you means declaring war on me, and they're not quite ready for that fight. So, I'm bait. You're protected. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Every choice I've made, every cold calculation, every moment of this has been to keep you breathing. Your father made me promise to protect his children when the debt came due. I'm keeping that promise the only way I know how. Tears streamed down Elena's face. By making me a prisoner. By making you untouchable. His gray eyes held something she'd never seen before, desperation, fear, something almost human breaking through the ice. I know what I am, Damien continued, his voice dropping. I know what this makes me. But the Lucanos killed my father in front of me when I was 22. They would have killed me too if I hadn't been faster, colder, more brutal. I rebuilt everything he lost, took back every inch of territory, and made myself into something they feared. And then I found out about you, about the promise, and I had a choice. Let you go and watch the Lucanos use you against me, or trap me in a gilded cage. Or give you the only protection that works in this world. My name. My ring. My reputation. He released her, stepping back. I never wanted you to find out like this. When were you planning to tell me? When were you going to stop lying? I don't know, he admitted, and the honesty of it was somehow worse than any lie. Maybe never. Maybe it was kinder that way. Elena looked at the papers scattered across his desk, the evidence of his manipulation, his control, his twisted version of protection. And underneath it all, buried deep, she saw what terrified her most. He actually believed he was saving her. Get out, she whispered. Get out and let me think. For once, Damien obeyed. The door closed behind him, and Elena collapsed into his chair, surrounded by the truth she'd been desperate to find and now wished she could unlearn. Her father had sold them all to save them. And Damien had bought her to honor a dead man's promise. Nothing about this was love. But it might be the closest thing to it that either of them would ever know. We're leaving. Tonight. Elena looked up from her untouched breakfast to find Damien standing in the doorway, Vincent beside him. Both men wore grim expressions. It had been 2 days since she discovered the truth in his study. 2 days of silence between them, sleeping on opposite edges of the bed, avoiding each other in the massive house. Leaving for where? She asked. Sicily. I have a property there. Remote, fortified. Off anyone's radar, Damien's voice was clipped, professional. Vincent discovered, we have a mole in the organization. Someone's been feeding the Lucanos information, our locations, our movements, everything. That's how they knew about the gala. Elena's stomach dropped. How long? At least 3 months. Maybe longer. He moved into the room, and she noticed the gun holster under his jacket. Which means they know about this villa. They know our routines. We're compromised. Who is it? The mole? Vincent's expression darkened.
Russo.
Caruso's associate. The one you met at dinner. The handsome man with the scar. Elena remembered his cold eyes, the way he'd watched her throughout the meal. Has he been dealt with? She asked, then immediately hated herself for using such a clinical euphemism for murder. He's missing, Damien said. Which means he ran. Which means the Lucanos know we know. He pulled out his phone, checked something, cursed under his breath. We have maybe 6 hours before they make a move. Pack light. Essentials only.
Elena stood.
My mother.
Marco.
If they know about me. Already handled. Your mother's being moved to a secure location in Philadelphia. Marco's on campus with 2 of my men posing as grad students. They'll shadow him until this is resolved. Damien met her eyes. I keep my promises, Elena. Even when you hate me for them. She wanted to argue, to rage at him for appending her life again. But she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand kept drifting toward his gun. He was scared. Actually scared. That terrified her more than anything. The private jet took them to a small airport in rural Sicily as the sun set. From there, a convoy of 3 SUVs wound through countryside that looked like something from a postcard. Rolling hills, ancient stone walls, olive groves silvered by moonlight. The villa emerged from the landscape like a fortress. Old stone, perched on a hilltop, surrounded by high walls and electronic gates. Armed men patrolled the perimeter. My grandfather's house, Damien said quietly as they pulled through the gates. He built it after the war. It's survived worse than the Lucanos. Inside, the villa was surprisingly warm. Terracotta floors, thick wooden beams, furniture that looked handmade and comfortable rather than expensive. It felt lived in, loved, so different from the cold perfection of the Lake Como property. You'll be safe here, Vincent said, directing men to check the perimeter. This place is a ghost. Not even in your father's records. Damien bought it through shell companies years ago. Elena walked to a window overlooking the valley. Lights from distant villages dotted the darkness. It was beautiful and isolating in equal measure. She felt Damien approach before he spoke. There's wine in the kitchen. Real Italian wine, not the expensive crap I keep in New York. His voice was softer than she'd heard it. My grandmother used to make dinner for 20 people in that kitchen. She'd sit me down and make me practice my Italian while she cooked. You had a grandmother? I had a family. Before all this, he stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Before my father dragged us into deeper waters. Before the Lucanos came. It was the most human thing he'd ever shared with her. Damien. I'm sorry. The words came out rough, unpracticed. For all of it. For the way this happened. For not giving you a choice. Elena turned to look at him. In the dim light, he looked younger, the harsh lines of his face softened by shadows and exhaustion. I'm still angry, she said. I know. But I'm also tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of pretending I don't. She stopped herself. Don't what? She couldn't say it. Couldn't admit that somewhere between the fear and the anger, she'd started to see him. Really see him. The man who fed stray cats. Who fixed broken furniture. Who'd thrown himself over her body without hesitation when bullets flew. Instead, she said, I'm tired of being scared. Damien's hand found hers, tentative, asking permission. I'll keep you safe, whatever it costs. Even your life. Especially that. The truth in his voice made her chest ache. Over the next 3 days, something shifted between them. Damien worked from the villa's office, coordinating with his people, hunting for Russo, shoring up defenses. But in the evenings, they had dinner together in that warm kitchen, real conversations about art, about his grandmother's recipes, about Elena's dreams before everything fell apart. He taught her some Italian. She made him laugh, actually laugh, when she mispronounced words. They drank wine on the terrace and watched stars emerge over the valley. It felt like peace. Like maybe, impossibly, they could find a way through this. On the fourth night, Elena reached for his hand across the dinner table. Damien's fingers intertwined with hers, and something in his expression cracked open. Vulnerability, longing, hope.
Anna, E.
The explosion shattered the moment. The villa's east wall erupted in flames. Alarms screamed. Glass rained from above as windows shattered. Vincent was shouting orders, and Damien had his gun out, pulling Elena toward the kitchen. "The safe room," he yelled over the chaos. Behind the pantry. More explosions. The front gate was breached. Through the smoke, Elena saw figures pouring into the courtyard, men in tactical gear, assault rifles raised. "Russo sold us out completely," Vincent snarled, firing through a window. "They brought an army." Damien shoved Elena toward the pantry. "Go. The safe room has communications, supplies, everything you need. Lock yourself in and don't come out until—" A bullet took out the window above them. Damien tackled Elena to the floor as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. She saw Vincent take a hit to his shoulder, saw two of their guards go down. They were outnumbered, outgunned.
Dying.
"I'm not leaving you," Elena gasped, clutching Damien's jacket. "You don't have a choice." He pulled her up, half-dragged her to the pantry. Behind a false wall was a steel door. He punched in a code with shaking fingers. "Get inside." "Please, Elena. Please." The door opened to reveal a small fortified room. Monitors, weapons, supplies. But Elena grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "Promise me you'll make it out. Promise me." His gray eyes held hers for one eternal moment. Then he kissed her, desperate, fierce, full of everything they'd never said. "I promise," he lied. He shoved her inside and sealed the door. Through the monitor, Elena watched him rejoin Vincent, watched them fight with the savage efficiency of men with nothing left to lose. She screamed, pounded on the door, but it was built to withstand worse than her fists. The firefight lasted 7 minutes. Then silence. Smoke obscured the cameras. Elena couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything except her own ragged breathing and the pounding of her heart. When the smoke finally cleared, the villa was burning. Bodies littered the courtyard. And Damien was gone. Elena didn't know how long she stayed in that safe room. Hours blurred together in the darkness, the monitors showing nothing but smoke and flames, the radio silent, her voice hoarse from screaming Damien's name into the void. When the door finally opened, she lunged forward with a piece of pipe she'd found, ready to fight. "Mrs. Villano." "It's me. Vincent." Covered in blood and soot, his left arm hanging uselessly at his side, but alive. Behind him were 3 other men, all looking like they'd crawled through hell. "Where is he?"
Elena demanded.
"Where's Damien?" Vincent's expression told her everything before his words did. The east wing collapsed. He was still inside when his voice broke. "I tried to go back for him. They dragged me out." The whole structure came down. No one could have survived. "No." Elena shook her head violently. "No, he promised. He promised me."
"I'm sorry."
She shoved past him, running through the ruined villa. The east wing was a catastrophe. Walls collapsed inward, wooden beams still smoldering, the air thick with ash. She screamed Damien's name until her throat bled, dug through rubble with her bare hands until they were torn and bleeding. "Mrs. Villano, we need to leave." Vincent's good hand on her shoulder. "The Lucanos might return. We need to get you out of Sicily." "I'm not leaving him." "He's gone." Vincent's voice cracked. "He's gone, and he died protecting you. Don't make that sacrifice meaningless." Elena collapsed in the ash and rubble, grief tearing through her like shrapnel. She'd spent weeks hating him, fighting him, resenting every moment of their forced marriage. And now he was gone, and all she could feel was the crushing weight of things left unsaid. She'd been falling for him, despite everything, maybe because of everything. And now she'd never get to tell him. Vincent and his men half-carried her to a car. They drove through the night to a different airport, boarded a different plane. Elena sat numb and silent, Damien's blood still on her hands from clawing through the rubble. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "Wherever you want," Vincent said. "Mr. Villanos will leave everything to you. His assets, his properties, his businesses. You're one of the richest women in America now," he paused. "And you're free."
Free.
The word felt like a curse. What about the Lucanos? With Damien gone and most of his operation in shambles, they'll consolidate what they want and move on. You're no longer useful to them. No leverage, no threat. Vincent met her eyes. You get to walk away. That's what he wanted. Elena looked out at clouds painted gold by sunrise. Everything she'd wanted 6 weeks ago, her freedom, her life back, escape from the cage. It felt like ashes in her mouth. Vincent set her up in a hotel in Paris, far from New York, far from Sicily, far from everything. He gave her new documents, new bank accounts, everything she needed to disappear. Your mother and Marco are safe, he told her before leaving. The protective detail will stay on them for another 6 months, then withdraw. The Lucanos have no reason to touch them now. He handed her a phone. This is clean. Untraceable. If you need anything. Will you tell me?
Elena interrupted.
If you find. If there's a body. If you're certain. Vincent's scarred face softened with something like pity. I'll tell you. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone in a beautiful city where she knew no one and nothing. She cut her hair, bleached it blonde, started going by her middle name Marie, got a job at a small art restoration shop in the Marais, using fake credentials Vincent had provided. The owner was an elderly French woman who asked no questions and paid cash. Elena told herself she was building a new life, that this was what survival looked like. But at night, she dreamed of gray eyes and reluctant smiles, of strong hands fixing broken furniture, of a kiss that tasted like goodbye. 2 months passed, then 3. Elena developed routines, work, a small apartment, quiet dinners alone. She video called her mother every Sunday, lying about being happy, about traveling Europe, about her fictional new boyfriend. Marco visited once, excited about his thesis, oblivious to everything she'd survived.
She was good at pretending now. Damien had taught her that.
It was a Thursday evening in November when she noticed the man following her. He was good, kept his distance, changed his appearance, but Elena had learned to spot watchers. Damien's paranoia had become hers. She took a circuitous route home, lost him twice, but he always reappeared. Professional, persistent. When she finally reached her apartment building, he was waiting by her door.
Tall.
Hood up, hands in pockets. Elena's hand found the knife Vincent had given her, hidden in her bag. The man stepped into the light. Her heart stopped. He was scarred now, a new one cutting through his left eyebrow. Thinner than she remembered. But those eyes. Those impossible gray eyes that had haunted every dream. You're dead, Elena whispered. Damien pulled back his hood. I was supposed to be. The villa. The collapse. Vincent said. Vincent said what I told him to say. Damien's voice was rough, exhausted. The Lucanos needed to believe I was dead. It was the only way to end it. The only way to give you your life back. Elena couldn't breathe. You let me think. You let me grieve. I know, shame and pain crossed his features.
I'm sorry.
But I needed you to be convincing. Needed everyone to believe it. The moment people knew I survived, you'd be in danger again. Then why are you here? Why risk it? He stepped closer, and she saw how much those months had cost him. The weight loss, the exhaustion, the barely healed wounds. Because I couldn't stay away, his voice broke. Because every day away from you felt like dying slowly. Because I'm a selfish bastard who'd rather risk your life than live without you. You left me. Tears streamed down her face. You made me fall for you, and then you left me in that room to watch you die. I was trying to save you. I didn't want to be saved. I wanted you. The confession hung between them like a gunshot. Damien closed the distance, cupped her face with shaking hands.
Eh?
She slapped him.
Hard.
Then grabbed his jacket and kissed him with all the rage and grief and desperate love she'd been carrying. He kissed her back like a drowning man finding air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena whispered, "If you ever fake your death again, I'll kill you myself." Deal. He pressed his forehead to hers.
I'm sorry.
For everything. For all of it. Shut up and come inside before someone sees you. She pulled him into her apartment, into her arms, into the life she'd been trying to build without him. And for the first time since that villa burned, Elena felt like she could finally breathe. Damien was gone when Elena woke. For one terrible moment, she thought she'd dreamed the entire thing, that grief had finally broken her mind, conjured him from desperate longing. But then she saw the note on her pillow, written in his precise handwriting. Had to leave before light. Too dangerous to be seen. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything. Tonight. Same place, midnight. D. Elena crumpled the note in her fist, emotions warring inside her. Relief that he was alive. Fury that he'd let her suffer. Fear that this was all some new manipulation. And underneath it all, the terrifying truth she could no longer deny. She loved him. She loved the man who'd bought her like property, imprisoned her in luxury, dragged her into a war she never asked to join. God, what was wrong with her? Work was impossible. Elena ruined a 17th-century frame by applying the wrong solvent, her hands shaking so badly that Madame Dubois sent her home early with concerned questions Elena couldn't answer. She spent the afternoon pacing her tiny apartment, replaying everything. Damien's scars. The way he looked at her, like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. The desperate honesty in his kiss. But also, the lies. The manipulation. The months of grief he'd put her through because he decided what was best for her without asking. At 11:30, she almost didn't go. At 11:50, she grabbed her coat. He was waiting in the shadows of a closed bookshop, hood up, hands jammed in pockets. When he saw her, something in his expression cracked open, relief so profound it looked like pain. You came? I'm an idiot, apparently. Elena crossed her arms. You have 10 minutes to explain before I walk away forever. They walked as he talked, staying to dark streets where security cameras were sparse. After the villa collapsed, Vincent and 2 others pulled me from the rubble, Damien said, his voice low and urgent. I was barely conscious, 3 broken ribs, concussion, burns. But I was alive. And in that moment, bleeding on the ground, I realized something. As long as Damien Villano existed, you'd never be free. The Lucanos would always use you against me. My enemies would always see you as my weakness. So, you decided to die. I decided to give you a choice. Something I never did before. He glanced at her. Those gray eyes haunted. Vincent spread the word. Damien Villano died in the villa attack. The Lucano family celebrated. My own people held a funeral. And you got to walk away. While you did what? Hid in Sicily? While I dismantled everything. Every criminal enterprise, every illegal operation, every dirty business deal my father started, and I continued. I spent 3 months burning it all down, severing ties, paying off debts, liquidating assets. He stopped walking, turned to face her fully. Everything I built, everything I destroyed it. For you. Elena stared at him. Why? Because you were right. That life, that world, it was going to destroy us both. And I couldn't, his voice cracked. I couldn't watch it destroy you. The money? The businesses? I kept the legitimate companies, real estate, shipping, imports. Everything legal. Everything clean. The rest is gone. He pulled out a folder from inside his jacket, handed it to her. including this. Inside were legal documents, pages and pages of transfers, foundations, charitable trusts, all in her name. What is this? Everything I liquidated, about $400 million, it's yours. Or rather, it's in a foundation under your control. For art restoration, education programs, scholarships for kids from families like yours, he smiled sadly. I figured you'd know better what to do with dirty money than I ever did. Elena's hands shook as she flipped through the papers. This was real. He'd actually done it. And you, she whispered. What about you? I'm nobody now. Just another guy trying to start over. He gestured to himself, jeans, worn jacket, scuffed boots. Nothing like the tailored suits and cold authority. I've got enough money to be comfortable, a new identity, no enemies left to chase me. I'm free too, Elena. For the first time since my father died. Then why come back? Why risk it? Damien stepped closer, and she let him. Because freedom means nothing if you're not in it. Because I spent 3 months trying to convince myself I did the right thing, that letting you go was noble and selfless, and every single day, without you felt like dying. His hand came up, hesitant, to cup her cheek. I love you. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you stitched me up by candlelight, maybe when you refused to leave the villa, maybe the first time I saw you in that museum and thought, that's the one who'll destroy me, but I love you, and I'm done pretending I don't. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. You don't get to do that. You don't get to put me through hell and then show up with declarations and expect. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know he was crying too now, this man who'd seemed made of ice. I needed you to know that you're free. Truly free. No debts, no obligations, no forced marriage. You can tell me to leave, and I will. You can go back to your life, and I'll never bother you again. His thumb brushed away her tears. Or you give us a real chance.
No contracts, no coerciam, no Mafia wars.
Just two people trying to figure out if what we had was real, or just trauma bonding, he smiled shakily. I'm betting on real, but I've been wrong before. Elena looked at this man who'd been her captor, her protector, her tormentor, her savior, who'd stripped away everything he was to give her, everything she needed. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I love you too, and I hate that I do. I know that too. She grabbed his jacket, pulled him down, kissed him hard. If we do this, if we try this, no more lies. No more deciding what's best for me. No more secrets. No more secrets, he promised against her lips. And therapy. Lots of therapy. Because we are deeply dysfunctional. He laughed, actually laughed, and it sounded like hope. Whatever you need. A car turned onto the street, and they both tensed, old instincts dying hard. But it passed without incident, just normal people living normal lives. The life they could have now. If they were brave enough to try. I have an apartment the size of a shoebox, Elena said. You'd have to actually work for a living. No private jets or armed guards. Just normal. Normal sounds terrifying. It really does. Let's try it anyway. She took his hand, this stranger who wasn't a stranger, this enemy who'd become something else entirely. And together, they walked into the darkness, towards something neither of them knew how to name. But maybe, just maybe, it looked like freedom. The knock on Elena's door came at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after Damien had reappeared in her life. She'd spent that week in a strange limbo, going to work, maintaining her routines, while secretly meeting Damien in quiet cafes and dark corners of the city. He was staying in a cheap hotel on the left bank, working construction jobs under his new identity. Learning to be ordinary. Learning to be free. It was working. Slowly, carefully, they were building something real. Until that knock. Elena opened the door to find a man in an expensive suit, mid-50s, with silver-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase. Professional. American. Distinctly out of place in her shabby building. Mrs. Villano, he said in English. My name is Richard Chen. I was Damien Villano's corporate attorney. May I come in? Elena's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Marie Durant. Please, his expression was kind but firm. I have information you need to hear. It's about your husband, and it's about why he really died. She let him in because what choice did she have? Chun sat in her only chair, opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency, and pulled out a folder. Another folder. Elena was so tired of folders containing life-altering information. First, you should know that Damien Villano is legally dead, Chun began. His will was executed, his assets distributed according to his wishes. Everything was handled exactly as he specified before the Sicily incident. I know about the foundation, Elena said carefully. The money he liquidated. That's not all he liquidated, Mrs. Villano. Chun laid out documents, page after page of property transfers, business dissolutions, account closures. In the 3 months before his death, Mr. Villano systematically dismantled his entire criminal enterprise. He paid off debts, severed relationships with criminal organizations, dissolved partnerships that had existed for generations. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to understand what he sacrificed. Chun pulled out more papers. These are testimony statements. Mr. Villano spent the last year of his life secretly cooperating with federal investigators. He provided evidence against the Lucano crime family, evidence that led to 47 indictments, including the family's leadership.
Elena's head spun.
He was working with the FBI? With several agencies, actually. It started after his father's murder. Damien wanted revenge, but he was also smart enough to know that going to war would only perpetuate the cycle. Chen's expression softened. The marriage to you wasn't just about protection, Mrs. Villano. It was about giving himself a reason to become someone better. Someone who deserved to walk away from all of it. Tears burned Elena's eyes. He never told me. He couldn't. The investigation was classified. His cooperation was sealed. If anyone had known the Lucanos, his own people, he would have been killed immediately. And so would you. Chun handed her another document. This is the final piece. Mr. Villano established a comprehensive trust before his death. Everything he owned that wasn't already liquidated, the legitimate businesses, properties, investments, it's all been transferred to a charitable foundation in your name. He already told me about the foundation. Not this one. This is different, Chun pointed to the papers. This foundation is worth approximately $2 billion, Mrs. Villano. It's designed to support art restoration, victims of organized crime, families affected by violence, addiction treatment programs. All the things Damien said his family destroyed. He wanted to rebuild what they'd broken. Elena couldn't breathe. $2 billion. A lifetime of atonement converted into hope. Why didn't he tell me any of this? Because he was ashamed. Chen's voice was gentle. In our last meeting, he said something I'll never forget. He said, I bought her like property, Chen. I controlled her, manipulated her, dragged her into hell. Even if I spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, she should never forgive me. But maybe she can use what I'm leaving behind to help people I hurt. He didn't want her gratitude, Mrs. Villano. He wanted your freedom. Elena pressed her hands to her face, overwhelmed. All those months, while she thought he was just a criminal, just a cold calculator using her as a chess piece, he'd been destroying himself to save her. Burning down everything he'd built to give her a chance at something better. There's one more thing. Chun pulled out an envelope. He asked me to hold this for 6 months after his death. To give it to you only if you were truly free and safe. I was going to mail it to you next week, but then I received word that you'd been seen with someone. Someone who looked remarkably like a dead man. Her heart hammered. I don't know what you mean. Mrs. Villano, I worked with Damien for 8 years. I knew him better than most. And I'll tell you what I told the private investigator who brought me those surveillance photos. He smiled slightly. Damien Villano is dead. Whoever that man is you've been meeting in Parisian cafes, he's someone else entirely. Someone who deserves a second chance. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Chun handed her the envelope and stood. The foundation paperwork is all there. You're the sole director, complete autonomy. Use it however you see fit. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Mrs. Villano, I think Damien made a lot of terrible choices in his life, but loving you wasn't one of them. When he was gone, Elena sat in silence, holding the envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single letter in Damien's handwriting. Elena, if you're reading this, I'm 6 months dead and you're 6 months free. I hope you're happy. I hope you're painting again. I hope you've forgotten my name. I'm not going to apologize again for what I did. You know I'm sorry. You know I'd undo it all if I could. But I can't, so instead I tried to undo the damage my family caused. The foundation is yours to control. Chun will help you navigate everything. I kept one thing for myself, the villa by the lake where we were married. Legally, it's in a trust that reverts to you if you ever want it. But I've instructed Chun to maintain it as is, empty, a monument to the life I'm leaving behind. Our beginning is preserved there. Maybe someday you'll want to see it again. Maybe you'll want to burn it down. Either way, it's yours. You asked me once what I really was. I think I was a man trying to be good, who only knew how to be ruthless. But with you, I learned something else. I learned what it felt like to want to be better, to actually try. That's the greatest gift you ever gave me, Elena. Not your obedience or your presence or your eventual acceptance, but the possibility that I could be someone worth your love. I hope whoever you're with now, whoever you choose in your freedom, treats you the way I never did. With gentleness, with honesty, with the respect you always deserved. Thank you for teaching me how to be human again. Even if I had to die to finally get it right. D. Elena read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she grabbed her phone and texted the number only she had. We need to talk.
Now.
30 minutes later, Damien arrived at her apartment, breathless and worried. What's wrong? Are you okay? Did someone? She shoved the letter into his chest. Read it. He did, his face going pale. Chin wasn't supposed to. How did he? $2 billion, Damien? FBI cooperation? A year of secret testimony? I was going to tell you, eventually.
When?
After we'd been normally dating for a decade. She was crying and furious and overwhelmed. You let me think you were just a criminal. That everything you did was selfish. That the foundation was just guilt money. It was guilt money. It was atonement. It was sacrifice. It was you literally destroying yourself to try to fix what your family broke. She grabbed his jacket, shook him. You're the most infuriating, complicated, self-sacrificing idiot I've ever met, and I love you so much it makes me insane. Damien stared at her, stunned.
You.
What? I love you. Not the crime boss, not the man who bought me, not even the man who saved me. I love the idiot who feeds stray cats and fixes furniture and learns construction work because he wants to build things instead of break them. She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. I love the man who died to set me free and came back because he couldn't stay away. That's who I choose. That's who I want. His arms came around her, crushing her against him. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. No more secrets. You just gave me $2 billion to run a foundation without asking me first. We're definitely going to therapy. He laughed through tears. Whatever you want. I want you.
Just you.
Not the money or the grand gestures or the martyrdom. Just the real you. The real me is a work in progress. Good, she kissed him softly.
So am I.
We'll figure it out together. Outside, Paris was waking up, normal people living normal lives. And for the first time, Elena and Damien could be among them. Broken but healing. Scarred but free. Together, finally, by choice. 6 months later, Florence. Elena stood in front of the gallery window, watching workers hang the last painting. Her hands trembled slightly. Nerves, excitement, terror all mixed together. Behind her, the evening sun painted Florence in shades of gold and amber, the city where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. They're going to love it, Damien said quietly, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. He wore simple clothes now, jeans, a button-down shirt, work boots still dusty from the construction site where he'd spent the morning. He'd started a legitimate restoration company, rebuilding old structures throughout Italy, putting broken things back together. It suited him. They're going to think I'm insane, Elena corrected, accepting the coffee. Who has their first solo exhibition about marrying a dead mobster? You're not calling it that, are you?
No.
I'm calling it reconstruction, very artsy. Very vague, she smiled despite her nerves. But everyone's going to know anyway. Chun made sure the foundation's work got press coverage. People aren't stupid. Let them talk. Damien's arm slipped around her waist. You turned pain into something beautiful. That's what art is supposed to do. The exhibition was Elena's catharsis, 12 paintings chronicling her journey from that first envelope to this moment. Abstract pieces mostly, emotion rendered in color and texture rather than literal representation. But one painting was different. The Man by the Lake hung in the center of the gallery. It showed a figure in a dark coat standing at the edge of water, his face obscured by shadows, his posture suggesting both power and terrible loneliness. It was the only piece she'd painted from memory rather than feeling. The only one that showed him as she'd first seen him, before she knew his story, before she understood his scars. I still think you made me too mysterious, Damien said, studying it. I painted what I saw. A stranger who terrified me. She leaned into him. I'm glad you're not a stranger anymore. They'd spent the last 6 months building a life that was shockingly ordinary. A small apartment in Rome. Regular jobs. Dinners with Elena's mother and Marco, who'd finally learned the truth and forgiven them both after several loud arguments. Therapy, so much therapy, working through trauma and control issues and the complicated ethics of falling in love with your captor. It wasn't perfect. Elena still had nightmares about gunfire. Damien still instinctively scanned rooms for exits. But they were healing. Together. The foundation was thriving too. Elena had hired a professional team to manage operations, but she stayed involved, personally selecting art restoration projects and victim support programs. Last month, they'd funded the restoration of her old museum's Renaissance wing. Full circle. You should get ready, Damien said, checking his watch. Doors open in an hour. Are you staying? Do you want me to? She turned to face him fully. I want you to live your life, Damien. Not hide in the shadows because of who you used to be. Chun was right. That man is dead. You're someone new now. Someone better, I hope. Someone real. She kissed him softly.
Stay.
Let people see us together. Let them wonder. I don't care anymore. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way it never had before. Then I'll stay. But I'm not wearing a tie.
Deal.
The gallery opening was everything Elena had dreamed. Collectors, critics, art lovers, they filled the space, studying her work, discussing technique and emotion and meaning. Several pieces sold within the first hour. A major museum expressed interest in the entire collection. But Elena kept finding herself drawn back to The Man by the Lake. People gathered around it, discussing the lonely figure, the sense of isolation and power it conveyed. No one seemed to recognize the man it depicted, or if they did, they were polite enough not to mention it. Until she saw him. Professor Mitchell stood in front of the painting, studying it with the careful attention he'd taught Elena to apply to artwork years ago. When he noticed her approaching, his expression was complicated, concern, understanding, perhaps even approval. Elena, he said warmly, embracing her. This is extraordinary work. Truly. The whole exhibition is remarkable. Thank you, Professor. That means everything coming from you. He glanced back at the painting. I heard rumors, about what really happened. The marriage, the circumstances. I'm ashamed I didn't push harder when something felt wrong. You couldn't have helped. No one could have. Perhaps his gaze drifted across the gallery to where Damien stood talking with another visitor. Is that him? The man from the lake. Elena's heart hammered. Professor. I'm not asking as someone who wants to expose you, Elena. I'm asking as someone who cares about you. His voice was gentle. Are you happy? Are you safe? Are you here by choice? She looked at Damien, at the man who'd bought her freedom with his own destruction, who'd learned to be gentle after a lifetime of violence, who still made her coffee every morning and asked about her dreams every night. Yes, she said simply. To all of it. Professor Mitchell studied her face, then nodded. Then that's all that matters. Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about right and wrong are too simple for the complicated truth of being human. He moved on to examine other paintings, leaving Elena standing alone in front of her portrait of shadows and water. She felt Damien approach before she saw him. People keep asking about that one, he murmured. Wondering who the mysterious figure is. Let them wonder. Should I be worried you immortalized me looking like a villain? You were a villain. That's what makes the rest of our story interesting. She slipped her hand into his. Besides, villains are always more compelling than heroes. Is that what we are? A compelling story? We're a messy, complicated, probably ill-advised love story that somehow worked out, she smiled. The best kind. As the evening wound down and the last visitors trickled out, Elena did one final walk through the gallery. Her journey, her pain, her transformation, all of it captured in paint and canvas. Public now. No longer a secret she had to carry alone. Damien was waiting by the exit, keys in hand, ready to go home. Home. Not a prison. Not a cage. Just a small apartment they'd chosen together, filled with second-hand furniture and books and art supplies and evidence of a life being built from scratch. Almost, Elena walked back to the man by the lake one last time. From her bag, she pulled out a single red rose, a private joke between them now, and a small card. She wrote quickly, her handwriting confident. Now it's your turn to live, Elena. Then she propped them against the painting's frame, a message to herself, from herself. A reminder of how far she'd traveled from that first envelope to this moment of freedom. Damien watched from the doorway, understanding without words. When she joined him, he took her hand, and they walked out into the Florence night together.
No guards.
No fear. No scripts to follow. Just two broken people who'd found a way to heal each other. The gallery door closed behind them, but the light inside kept burning, illuminating the paintings, the stories, the evidence that even the darkest beginnings could transform into something beautiful. And somewhere in that light, the man by the lake stood frozen in paint, forever watching, forever waiting, forever free.
The end.